We're seeing a really nice rebound in BTC. Is this the beginning of a reversal? I know we talked about that yesterday, but we actually cleared a very important resistance level for Bitcoin. Does that mean that we're going to make a new high moving forward? We have Forrest joining us today for Forrest Friday. We also have some interesting news. There's rumors that BlackRock is getting ready to file for a Solana and an XRP ETF. And we know what happens when BlackRock files for ETFs. Well, they get approved. What does that mean for XRP? Should we see a big rally coming? We have the XRP man himself joining us. Of course, I'm talking about Rocco. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about stellar lumens. That chart looks like it's about to explode. And then we'll look at a new potential narrative that I haven't heard anyone talking about. And that could there be some money to make there? We'll talk about that and much, much more on today's episode of Sin City Crypto. Let's go.
Hola! It's your boy, Big Rob, back in the house. Welcome to Sin City Crypto, home of the entertainment and price prediction channel, where we take old, boring, and stale information and price predictions, and we give you a fun and entertaining, always right price prediction kind of way.
Always right, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely you, for sure.
That's
You're
right. You know what?
right,
I said earlier this week that 77,000 was the bottom. I said, hey guys, the bottom is in. We stamped it on a thumbnail. I told the viewers, and hopefully you listen, to tattoo it on you that we will never go under 80K again. And here we are. I was right. Thank you. Proceed with the bull market. Green light. The crossing rails are up. The train is moved by, whatever you want to call it. 100K. Here we go. China is buying Bitcoin. So is Russia. And it's a trade war is now happening quietly behind the scenes. It is now a Cold War, but the median is crypto, aka Bitcoin. Hey, have you not seen the loose rumors? Yeah, I'm telling you, you know what? It is coming out that Russia and China are exchanging oil in Bitcoin, right? And all of a sudden, there's rumors coming out that Putin is proceeding with buying Bitcoin. This is all done quietly, right? And what happens in a Cold War, right? You start increasing your stockpile, you start moving missiles around, you start preparing for battle, but you do it in a way that's secretive. And what's not secretive is that the fact that the US is going to be buying Bitcoin to a tune of 1 million Bitcoin. They've already shifted 200,000 Bitcoin into basically long-term cold storage, don't ever sell position. And other nations who, if true, if Russia and China are exchanging goods and using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange to circumvent sanctions, if both of those countries are already using Bitcoin, they're looking at the US buying Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin. Don't you think logically the countries will say, hey, you know what? Let's front run the US, buy Bitcoin now because they're trying to price us out of the markets, right? They're trying to get a position on Bitcoin before we are. I don't think it's that far-fetched. I think that this is actually happening now. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. And I would actually be shocked if the US goes in and goes through the process of buying 1 million Bitcoin for their strategic reserve and nobody else is buying. I would genuinely be shocked. So take it for what you want. Maybe it's a conspiracy theory. Maybe it's Big Rob's,
just theory. Can we bring Forrest on?
Yeah.
Jesus. Hi, Forrest. How are you?
Yo, what's up? Thanks.
Did you know Rob is never wrong? Never wrong. He said it's never going down to 80. It actually went down to 80. He's not wrong.
Never wrong.
Yeah. Forrest, thanks for joining us, man. I want to get your thoughts on the current price action here for BTC. 82K was a pretty big level. 84 was another big level. Looks like we're trading above that. What are you seeing in the chart? Are there any key levels that stand out to you that you want Bitcoin to reclaim to where you can feel more comfortable saying, all right, we're going to start making higher highs now?
Sure. Do you want me to talk to a chart or just kind of?
If you want. Yeah, if you want to, go ahead.
Sure. Let's throw on Bitcoin. And this is just kind of like my overview of Bitcoin here. I know it's a little bit of a messy chart. Yeah, so 70 to 75K is, and particularly 73 to 73 and a half thousand, but the whole range 70 to 75 has a massive bid. Meaning like the order book, if you go and look at like where there's limit orders from market makers in Wales, they're willing to buy a lot of Bitcoin in the 70 to 75K region. From a technical analysis standpoint, no chart that I've ever back tested, no chart that I've ever seen in my entire life has had as strong of a support as 73K Bitcoin does currently. So I am very, very willing, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that support can't break. It doesn't mean that we can't go into a bear market. It doesn't mean that we can't go and, spend a ton of time chewing into this ask and then break through it. What it does mean is, as of right now, if we move down into 73K or 70 to 75K for that matter, I am a buyer. I'm a very, very willing buyer. And I think it would, at the very least, worst case scenario, lead to a very sizable bounce and a very good trade opportunity. I just don't foresee, unless anything major happens, a new development, black swan event, escalation of war directly with the US or something crazy, pandemic level FUD like we saw with COVID. Unless that happens, I don't foresee Bitcoin going below 70K. And then even if it does, there's also like a massive big level at 65K that I would also expect to hold, not as strong as 70 to 75, but very strong as well. In the meantime, I think I'm about 60, I'd say 50-50 on bottom being in. I can definitely see us held this level, just sub 80, basically 77 to 80. It's a big, strong support region that I've had marked out. I've been buying under 80. I bought a little bit at around 82.7, and then I bought more under 80, and I'll buy even more down here at 70 to 75 if we get it. On the daily and the 4 hour, we do see some initial signs of reversal. That being RSI giving bullish divergence on the daily, giving bullish divergence on the 4 hour. Now, what you can have is, if this turns back around, you could get triple bullish divergence, which would be an even better long setup. And that's why I'm very willing to buy at 73. For me, the supply overhang is really around, there's some sells at around 90K, which is this kind of, prior range. I'll bolden that up a little bit. Basically the range that was support that we broke down below and held as resistance. And there's more supply where this sell-off began and got stuffed on that big candle up earlier in this month off of the news wick. So there's quite a bit of supply around 95 to 96. I think if we flip 96 into support or break above 96, reclaim, I actually think we're going much, much higher. Targets for bull market peak later in the year, maybe August through November-ish, would be $150,000 to $220,000 Bitcoin. But for me to have confidence that we are going back up for certain, not for certain, but with a high degree of likelihood, flip over 96K. But again, I'm willing to be long from down here because I think this support is so strong, and we're probably going to retest 95, 96K. So I think there's a really good opportunity to just be buying Bitcoin down here and then selling, or just hodling if you want to hodl and you are a believer.
Amen to that. The level I kind of had for us that I had my eye on was 71. I think it was like 71.2 or 71.6. I'm kind of in your camp. I'm like 50-50. I'm actually probably 60-40 that the bottom is not in. I think we get a relief rally. I think the level that I'm looking out for next is like 86 to 86.5. And I expect the price to get rejected there. The NASDAQ, what was it? The S&P or the NASDAQ is officially in correction territory, right? 10%. We looked at the NASDAQ chart. I don't know if you want to pull that up. Maybe you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, but it broke below its 200-day moving average. It also broke below it. There's like a three-year trend line. And it's more than 10% off its high. And so when you want to talk about technicalities and, vernacular, like, well, what's a correction? What's a recession? Technically, it's in a correction, right? I think 10% is the number they threw out. So I think with the macro overhang, with Donald Trump seemingly can't stay away from Truth Social or Twitter, now they're talking about annexing Papua New Guinea. I don't know. What's it going to be next week? I think the markets are still fearful. There was also a report that came out that measured consumer confidence and also what people expect inflation. And everyone's expecting inflation to go back up, which explains the rise in gold prices. And so with all that to be considered, I definitely think Bitcoin's bottom is definitely closer than the stock market's bottom is. And I think we get one more flush down and then we start to get massive rallies out of BTC. That's kind of my thesis. I'm curious to know what the chat thinks. How do you guys see this thing playing out over the next, 3 to 6 months? I think patience is going to pay off, but that's kind of where I'm at. Any thoughts on that for us? That kind of scenario or thought process? Anything you want to push back on? Anything you agree with?
I think inflation is going down, at least in the short to midterm. Mainly, we've had our first cool print. What was it? Earlier this week. So it came in at 2.8 versus 2.9 expected. Since February, that's for February, right? We're in March. Well, yeah. March CPI so far, or March inflation, if you go to Trueflation, which has been directionally accurate, almost every CPI print.
Yep.
It's down to 1.5. It cratered down to 1.3 for a while, and so far it's at 1.5. So that was a very big decrease. I think the Trueflation ended February at 2.2, and now it's down at 1.5. So that's a 0.7 decrease on Trueflation, which again doesn't necessarily mean that CPI is going to come in at 1.5, but it does mean like directionally we would expect that it's going to come down from 2.8 to maybe 2 or 2.2 or 2.3 and be a pretty large drop that I think maybe tempts Jerome Powell and the Fed to cut rates a little bit more aggressively than they expected. The reason I think inflation's falling, despite the fears of like tariffs raising prices, I think it's just it's oil. It's really difficult to have a recession historically when oil prices are this low. Usually what breaks a bubble or breaks us into a recession is when you get a big oil price spike, like we did in that mini recession in 2022. Oil went from like negative in COVID and rebound. We didn't have the production, the oil production. We couldn't ramp it back up enough post-COVID to drive oil prices down, and oil spiked to like over $100 a barrel briefly. And that's what really pushed the markets down and pushed inflation fears up. Right now, oil's very, very cheap. And oil production in the United States is at all-time highs. And Trump wants to continue to drill. So I think that is like the number one indicator for me of, okay, if oil prices start going up from here, that's problematic. That is something that I think is very, very alarming. There's all these other things. There's tariffs. There's, it's potential price effects that it could have. There's unemployment, there's government spending cuts, there's tax cuts, there's all these other variables. But for me, what I'm looking at most is oil prices. If oil prices are low, it is historically difficult to have a recession with oil prices low. Whereas as soon as they spike, it just raises the cost of everything, hurts the consumer, hurts businesses. So if oil prices are low, I'm okay for right now.
Of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but when there's economic hardship or contracting economy, usually a bottom signal is when oil prices have crashed, correct? And I'm not saying the oil prices have crashed right now, but by the way, the chart I had pulled up when you were talking was the crude oil futures. So since March of 2022, oil prices are down 50%. 50%. And to your point, literally everything is influenced by the price of crude oil, natural gas, because obviously that's the lifeblood of any economy, moving goods and services from point A to point B to the consumer, to the enterprises and the companies. And so I think what you're saying is spot on. And again, usually it's, when you look at oil prices bottoming, that's typically when the correction is over. And you look what happened in 2008. So this is oil in 2008. We peaked out at $146 a barrel in July of 2008. That is right before Lehman Brothers went under. It was September of 2008, Lehman Brothers went under. And then look when we got the turnaround was when oil bottomed in February of 2009. And I bet you if I throw on the Dow, or we can put the S&P 500 on here. oil prices bottom and the stock market starts to gain. And so I think you're spot on with your analysis for it. I just want to give people watching a kind of a visual look at what's going on. So I agree. And what I was referencing to for us as far as people fearing inflation is going up, that's just consumer sentiment. It's not backed by any data. It's not numbers pulled from Truflation or from any CPI or anything. It's just people are expecting it because they're drawing a conclusion from tariffs equal higher prices, which is technically true unless they're offset by some other way, like reducing capital gains tax, reducing income tax, so on and so forth. So there's ways to offset it, but we'll see how that's going to play out. With that being said, I want to start here. One narrative that I think everyone here on the show now is super bullish on is RWA. And this is from Mike Novogratz. BlackRock's bid will just cross $1 billion. Massive milestone for tokenization. We've been saying it. Everything that can be tokenized will be. RWAs are coming on chain fast. The rails are being built. Adoption is next. When you go to rwa.xyz, you could take a look here. Now, this is very interesting, okay? So these are the top networks for real-world asset tokenization. Ethereum's market share has declined over 22% over the last 30 days, currently sitting at 52.86. On the contrary, ZK Sync, their market share for RWA is up 834% over the last 30 days. Forrest, if you can, please pull up the ZK Sync chart. And the ticker is ZK. And their value, their total value over the last 30 days, up 1,273%. You also see XRP Ledger is finally listed on here as well. Their total value over the last 30 days is up 882%. But still, the lion's share of the market share is going to Ethereum. You have Stellar Lumens at number 2 with 5.5. And then some ones maybe people didn't put into the RWA kind of thesis is Polygon, Aptos, Solana. No one really talks about Solana when we bring up RWA, Arbitrum Base, and then, of course, XRP Ledger. Now, the thing with ZK Sync, it's very interesting. It is very dominant, or its market share is it's 1.9 billion. So 87.5% of their total value is in private credit. So you have U.S. Treasury debt, you have stable coins, institutional funds, and then you have private credit. This is where ZK Sync leads, and it's currently sitting at number 159 with a market cap of around 1.46 billion, fully diluted. Forrest, what are you seeing on the ZK Sync chart, and do you have any insight into this project, and what are your thoughts on the numbers I kind of shared? Is this should this be on people's radar for RWA?
Yeah, so actually, my brother would be the person to talk to about ZK Sync. He's actually working on real world assets on ZK Sync, deploying some solutions for.
Can we bring him on the show?
But yeah, I mean,
no, seriously,
I'll reach out to him.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing with ZK Sync is I believe it's an L2 on ETH. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know a whole lot about ZK Sync, and unfortunately, the price action has just not been good. It's got kind of a lower float, high fully diluted valuation, 1.4 billion versus the only 20, a little less than, looks like 20% circulating supply. So it looks like there's quite a bit of overhang in terms of, I don't know, maybe it's VC allocation. I don't know who owns those tokens, but generally more circulating supply is generally a good thing. I would be definitely paying attention. Like, I think the RWA narrative is going to be the biggest transition. I think it's going to be I think RWAs and tokenization is in line with AI and robotics. I think like those are the three things that you want to be paying attention to for the next decade, next 5 to 10 years. So the fact that ZK Sync is kind of an outlier in terms of their early growth in RWAs, and I actually think it's like very, very, very early for RWAs. I think you want to pay attention to this chart and look for it to start to bottom out. I mean, we're still probably, this thing probably has to go find a base, right? It's going to have to kind of chop through some levels and base out. I don't know how long that's going to take. I don't know when it's going to bottom, but there's certainly some signals that we can wait for. If we start to see like an upwards trend develop, right? And you see some higher highs and higher lows, and then some, consolidation and then a breakout. This is definitely something I'm very willing to take a long position on, or grab exposure to, just based on the fact that I'm very bullish on RWAs. So something worth paying attention to. Is just very difficult to justify, hey, I'm going to come in and be a buyer of this token when you're in this aggressive downtrend, because this could continue, and maybe the basis form down here, and then we see upside. But I think from a TA perspective, this is a little bit untouchable right now. Fundamental perspective, I think the picture's starting to look a lot better, as you showed.
Awesome. Now, I know you said your brother. Any insight from him? Have you asked him any questions? Anything you can share, or maybe just RWA in general? I know a lot of people, when they bring up RWA, it's usually Ondo, Stellar Lumens, there's again a few other ones. Anyone that you kind of have your eye on, Forrest, or anything that you would put in an S tier category when it comes to RWA?
XRP, honestly. I think it's just very, very early, and the SEC case hasn't even been dismissed yet. So I don't think we're going to see any growth in RWAs on XRP until that actually happens. But I think they're the best positioned token and ecosystem to benefit from the RWA narrative. If you look at this Genius Stablecoin Act, a lot of the amendments in the language are kind of tailored and specifically designed around some of the features that RLUSD as a stablecoin, the Ripple stablecoin, have. There's a clawback feature, and there's got to be features in stablecoins where you can claw them back, or you can freeze them. Very centralized features, which is the reason to use Bitcoin versus a stablecoin. But banks want to use stablecoins. People want to tokenize their assets, but you can't just have a completely permissionless ecosystem where if you get hacked by North Korea, you can't, go and freeze the funds. So, I'm very bullish on RWAs and bullish on XRP because of it. But I still think it's just very early days for RWAs. As far as my brother, I mean, I think he's in agreement, more so in that. I say agreement because I still think there's some interesting stuff in AI and robotics that'll overlap with crypto, but his opinion is from what he sees working in blockchain and Web3 for a while, is that his opinion is the only legitimate use case for crypto. I know this is kind of an extreme view. I don't necessarily agree, but his take is that our real world assets and tokenization, stable coins, gold, precious metals markets, bonds, tokenization of assets is the primary use case for blockchain technology. Which if you say primary use case, yeah, I think he's correct there. I think it's going to be bigger than any, I don't even think we've seen we've seen speculation. We've seen ICOs and NFTs and meme coins. We're just now getting to the adoption curve where mainstream is actually implementing blockchain technology, and the use case they are using it for is tokenization of real world assets. So early days.
Yeah, it makes sense. Rob, what are your thoughts
on RWAs? You mentioned the court case getting dismissed, or we're still being in an ongoing litigation. A lot of rumors that it's supposed to come to an end here shortly. Eleanor Tourette was saying that they were going to drop the case here in the very near future. She didn't give an exact timeline, but I honestly would be surprised if by the end of the month that court case is still going on. I feel like it is a pretty big court case, and so it's something that the SEC was litigating for years and years and years. So probably not quite as easy to dismiss as the original, cases that the SEC had against, say, Kraken and Coinbase. I feel like those weren't too far into the litigation process, so it's probably easier to drop those. But I do think that I would be shocked not to see the XRP court case get dismissed. And it's also just an appeal, so it's not like they're going through this giant court case still. It's at the appeals process. It's already been ruled upon, and so at this point, it's why not, right? I did want to, I came into the show. Obviously, I know you caught the beginning part of it, where I was kind of hyping up the idea that Russia and Vladimir Putin perhaps were buying Bitcoin, and also China. I wanted to expand on this because it not just loosely throwing these things out. I mean, there are a lot of headlines out today. Just to take a peek here, you do have Unnamed insiders allege Russia taps crypto assets to facilitate oil trade with China and India. And then you also have Russia and Iran turn to crypto to dodge sanctions in oil trade. Also, you have Vladimir Putin saying nobody can ban Bitcoin. You had the news we talked about earlier this week where the Bank of Russia allows highly qualified investors to buy and sell cryptocurrencies. So their shift among the investors is also changing. And then, this was from Cynthia Lummis on kind of the trade war idea. Take a listen.
Wouldn't it be fun if the next arms race was not for weapons, it was for Bitcoin? Wouldn't it be fun if the U.S. is buying Bitcoin and it scares China and Russia so they start buying Bitcoin, and we have an arms race over Bitcoin instead of over weapons? That we're as globally, we're challenging each other to have a secure store of value.
So like so much fun.
Yeah, so it makes sense, right? I mean, if they're using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange for trading oil, and this is per Reuters and also Bitcoin Reuters. How you pronounce it? Reuters, Reuters. Whatever you want to call it.
Robin is very sophisticated.
It's a French, like croissant.
So, I mean, do you guys put any weight to this? I mean, do you think? I'm just saying, I would be shocked if China and Russia have zero Bitcoin and the U.S. is.
Well, China has Bitcoin. They're the second largest government to own Bitcoin.
But I'm just saying that they just completely stay still, right? Let's just say the U.S. starts buying Bitcoin, right? $100,000 Bitcoin purchase, right? Say they come out and they pass the Cynthia Lummis bill. They have the strategic reserve where they're now required to buy, a million Bitcoin, 200,000 Bitcoin per year over the course of 5 years. Do you see the U.S. buying the first chunk of Bitcoin and literally being the first country? I don't see. I think it's going to get front run. I think that Iran, China, Russia will be a buyer of Bitcoin, especially they're using it right now. They see the use case of utility. They're actually using it as a means of payment. And so, I mean, it just makes too much sense to me. It really does.
Since you brought up the Bitcoin reserve, so we talked about executive orders. Now, I am not a, political science expert. I'm also not a lawyer. But what I do know is executive orders can completely be rescinded by the next government, the next president that comes in. What cannot be rescinded by one person is a piece of legislation, law. Okay, so that has to go to Congress. So what is the House doing? The House aims to solidify the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Congressman Byron Donalds, which, by the way, is running for governor in Florida. If I was living in Florida, I would vote for this man. Representative Donalds is pushing legislation to cement President Trump's executive order establishing a national strategic Bitcoin reserve. The proposed bill aims to safeguard these reserves from future policy changes. If passed, this move would protect approximately 200,000 Bitcoin currently held by the U.S. government, prohibiting their sale. And obviously, we know that the House holds the power of the purse. And so could we get something in there that allocates some sort of money for the government to actively be buying Bitcoin, not just budget neutral ways, but there's money allocated, set aside. If we can send money over to Turks and Caicos for transgender mice, I'm pretty sure we can set a little bit aside to buy some BTC. You know what I'm saying? Then I want to move on to this. From Nate Garassi, I'm ready to log a formal prediction. BlackRock will file for both a Solana and an XRP ETF. Solana could be any day. Think XRP once the SEC lawsuit is concluded. Now, we know the initial wave was delayed. That includes XRP. That includes Solana. And I think that was Litecoin. And there was one, I believe, for Dogecoin. Those got kicked. That can got kicked down the road. But we know if BlackRock, and I'm not saying, I think this is a different time. Gary Gensler's time, BlackRock, the guy's got no choice. Now, I think they're going to prove him anyways. But having BlackRock jump in, I think just adds more credibility to that. And so, Forrest, it's pretty straightforward. General thoughts. Do you agree with what Nate Garassi's saying? Do you think we see it these ETFs get approved in the first half of this year, so in Q2 essentially. And then what do you think that'll do for Solana, for XRP, for the altcoins that do get the ETFs? Because a lot of people look what happened with Bitcoin and currently with Ethereum. Some argue it's kind of been a net negative in the very short term. Do you foresee the same thing happening once we get the Solana, XRP, and all the other altcoin ETFs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's positive just because you've got access to more liquidity, right? It's easier to buy Solana through your brokerage, through an ETF or XRP. But more so, I actually think XRP in particular, and so I think it'll be positive for Solana as well, but I think XRP in particular benefits from this because I do believe that the demographic of XRP investors is more in line with your traditional finance, your legacy investor. I think that's probably now more so Bitcoin as well. But I think there's a demographic overlap in traditional finance and legacy with appetite for XRP. There's one other thing I was going to say. XRP. Why am I blanking on it right now?
XRP to 300.
XRP to 300.
XRP.
No. The other thing is the grayscale over so Bitcoin and Ethereum both had very bad grayscale overhangs. So the grayscale had an ETF as well, which I believe grayscale has applied for both Solana and XRP ETFs where their trusts just get converted. But there was so much Bitcoin and Ethereum in those grayscale trusts from last cycle. And there was at such a high fee when the grayscale converted their trust into an ETF that you saw just a large amount of outflows going out of the grayscale ETFs and either going back into like the BlackRock ETF or just out of the system completely. So you had a lot of selling pressures, particularly on Ethereum. Whereas I think the amount of XRP and the grayscale trust is very low.
There you go.
Pretty insignificant. 11.6 million. Yeah. So basically nothing. I mean, you're talking about,
Bitcoin was 30 billion for us. Bitcoin was 30 billion that grayscale had.
So I think the net negative from like the grayscale ETF that we saw with both Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it really like I don't think we saw the speculative appetite in Bitcoin to offset that. We didn't see that with Ethereum, and I think that's been a big net negative for ETH. XRP really doesn't have that problem. 11.6 million that's like nothing, chump change. Yeah. So I think that's a positive for the XRP ETF as well.
Okay. Any thoughts there, Rob?
Not too much. Yeah,
it's pretty straightforward. But in case you want to add anything else, now you guys brought up ETH. Forrest, if you want to pull up an ETH chart, I'm so sick of looking at this chart. It's such an ugly chart. It's disgusting.
I mean,
it makes me throw.
Do you remember? I'm not trying. No,
I don't.
I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be funny, but I just want to point out, and it's not like I told you so. I'm just genuinely curious.
I told you so.
About a month ago, I started saying, at what point when ETH continues to trade against Bitcoin negatively, at what point do you say enough is enough? Remember, I said, it was about a month ago, I said, what happens if in 6 months Bitcoin is still outperforming ETH? I mean, do you still just keep holding it? Do you still keep buying it? I'm just genuinely curious. At what point do you say, I mean, are you going to wait till 2028 and then be like, the breakout's coming?
Robert, listen,
2029, the breakout's coming.
Listen, Robert.
2030, you're like, one of these days, it's going to
stop hijacking my thing, okay? Jesus. Anyways, look at this. This is
the question.
No. These are inflows, and let me correctly. ETH inflows into accumulation addresses. Now, I shared this on the evening stream yesterday, and you can see here a massive spike in accumulation addresses that have been buying Ethereum. You also have, not that one. So you have a few things that are looking good as far as on-chain, right? You also have the ETH's realized price has officially crossed below, or the price has crossed below the realized price. And so it's only done that one time before, and ETH had a really nice bounce, and that is this chart right here. The orange being its realized price. So, Forrest, ETH, I feel like 1,500, maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. 17, 1,800 seems like a pretty good spot here. What's your thesis on Ethereum from a TA standpoint? And if you want to answer Rob's question, go ahead, because I've answered it multiple times.
Yeah, for me, ETH is performed so poorly that it just, unless something fundamentally changes, it's just why buy ETH over XRP, which has performed a lot better? Why buy ETH over Bitcoin? Why buy ETH over Solana? You know, like you have to ask those questions. And for me, like I don't see anything that's fundamentally shifted yet in favor of Ethereum for making me want to buy it. Now, you could get a technical bounce here. Historically, however, when ETH breaks a major trend line, normally, like normal trend lines, you get a back test. And we did back in 2020, 2021. Sure. But you know, historically, when ETH capitulates, it capitulates extraordinarily hard because oftentimes you have a bit of leverage built up on chain and you get on-chain liquidations. So if, you know, for example, I think like the ETH Foundation could get liquidated at like $1,200 ETH. So this thing hasn't even back tested yet, and it just looks like pure capitulation. Now there's quite a bit of support down here at, you know, like 17 to 100 to 2,000, turned into resistance, and we could hold here. Short term, there are some bullish signals on like the hourly and the 4 hour. I was hedged short Ethereum this morning, and then before the market opened, I ended up closing most of that short just because Ethereum started looking bullish in the short term. Whole market did. But I do believe, and I'm not trying to raise alarm bells here, I do believe that if Bitcoin goes down to that 70 to 75K region we were talking about, I think Ethereum could spill to like 1,200. I think you could get an on-chain liquidation cascade. The last time we broke down below this level that we're testing right now, we spilled down to 900, so sub 900 is like 880, I think was the low. So I do think Ethereum could capitulate pretty hard. If you look at ETH Bitcoin and what that would look like on ETH Bitcoin, from essentially where we're at right now, that would be about another 28% capitulation on ETH versus Bitcoin. So you'd have Bitcoin going down like 10% and ETH going down about 30 and change percent from where it's at right now. Which would probably be the bottom, or bottom for a technical bounce. You'd expect some sort of buyers to finally start showing up in this region and get somewhat of a bounce. But right now, it is both from a technical perspective and a fundamental perspective really hard to justify longing Ethereum here, especially as vulnerable as it is. Because I think if the bulls don't step in and defend this region, I think that you're at risk of seeing some nasty on-chain liquidations like we've seen in the past. So 1,200 would be kind of the target for that to end. And you might step in and be a buyer there, but
you say 1,200?
Pretty vulnerable.
Did you say 1,200, Forrest?
1,200, yeah.
That's disgusting.
It would be disgusting. It's not my base case. I actually think there's a decent chance the lows are in. Even for Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin does spill to like 71, 72, 73, I think the floodgates could open on ETH and you could get some real capitulation here, and it could get ugly.
I look at, the ETH chart, and it makes me just think about the BlackBerry phone, right? And if you were to look at BlackBerry as a company publicly traded, and you were to say, hey, this chart is down, right? And at the onset of the release of the iPhone, you can say, hey, you know what? iPhone is here. It's a fad. It's trending. Everyone loves the BlackBerry. They love that keyboard. Like they're the original smartphone. It makes sense. Let's buy that. That's how I feel ETH is, because when I look at it from, I'm in this ecosystem. I'm in the crypto world.
This is BlackBerry, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, and so I'm in the crypto world. I look at it this way: people aren't using ETH as much as they are Solana. I'm sorry, man. Am I just? Do I have a bias here, Forrest, or do you agree? Do you think that when it comes to people using a blockchain, it just seems like the go-to smart contract platform, DeFi platform, meme coin platform, whatever it is, like it's on Solana. And so how can you keep up with Bitcoin when you're not even the leader in your own space? Bitcoin is the obvious leader and hedge against inflation, hard money, store of value, whatever you want to call it. They're the top one. So obviously you would expect that to stay number one. Nobody's disputing the fact that someone's going to flip Bitcoin in the short term, maybe later down the road, but it ain't happening no time soon if it does. So Bitcoin number one. Number two is going to be the leader of whatever else it is. And you know what? ETH just had such a strong head start because there was no competitors at the time on the rise of ETH. But they are not the leader anymore. And so at what point do you say it's better to hold ETH than Bitcoin? Give me a thesis. They're not even the leader in their own space. How can you outperform Bitcoin if you can't even be the number one in your own category? And you want to outperform the strongest asset ever created?
Calm down, Michael Saylor.
I'm just genuinely like, I don't understand. And it's like it's like this guy has the BlackBerry and he's like, BlackBerry's price just keeps falling. I'm buying more and more. Be like, bro, have you not noticed every teenager at the mall has an iPhone? Like, have you not seen it? Nobody's buying BlackBerries. Nobody's using Uniswap anymore. It's outdated. I'm sorry. And they just refuse to upgrade.
No, they don't refuse to upgrade. They actually try to push upgrades faster and it failed. True story.
That's just, I can't, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe in the short term it rallies, but I just don't see any way that ETH outperforms Bitcoin in anything longer than, I would say, 15 months.
Yeah, I got an interesting chart here on that comparison. So on the black here is BlackBerry versus Apple. And once it broke down, it just it never came back. This is Ethereum versus Bitcoin. So a very similar structure. Maybe we come back up one more time, to back test the whatever.
Damn it, Forrest.
I would hope for it. But this thing looks like BlackBerry versus
That's
Apple.
That's impressive. You put that together.
That is pretty impressive.
In the 1.5 minute rant I had there.
It was definitely more than a 1.5 minutes. You just don't realize.
Time dilation in my head is real.
So Forrest, Forrest, let's assume that this chart has some weight. Okay, what does that mean for the ecosystem of Ethereum, the the ERC tokens, the NFTs? Does that mean that those are going to have to find liquidity elsewhere?
How many BlackBerry apps do you think survived? You get what I'm saying? How many BlackBerry?
Can I ask Forrest?
Okay, how about this?
Jaded.
How many companies that made the cover for the OtterBox version of the BlackBerry, do you think they were still in profit? No,
Anyways,
they all went down.
Forrest.
Anything associated with that garbage went down.
Can I ask my friend Forrest here?
I saw a BlackBerry at the GameStop, at the Game Shop store.
Forrest, please. I don't know if you remember my question because we were rudely interjected. What does that mean for the ETH ecosystem, the tokens, the ERCs, the NFTs? Should people just be cautious there too, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean the NFTs are already basically zeroed out.
True.
I mean, short of like CryptoPunks and Bored Apes, it's like even Bored Apes are like way down compared to they were. So I wouldn't be speculating in those markets either. Meme coins have totally moved off of Ethereum and onto Solana. I'm not bullish at all on meme coins at this moment in time. So no, I actually think we're at a very big inflection point in all global markets right now. I think we're at a big inflection point in gold versus the S&P 500. I think funds are underweight gold and overweight stocks. I think we're at a huge inflection point in the crypto market. I think people are overweight permissionless protocols like Ethereum and underweight permissioned protocols or more quote unquote centralized protocols that we're actually going to see adoption built on for real world assets such as XLM and XRP and ZK, maybe ZK. And then the other problem is like getting into Ethereum's underperformance. And then what does that mean for L2s that built on top of Ethereum? And what does that mean for their token values? Which is, a difficult topic. But yeah, I think we're in an inflection point. I think everything up until this point has been early speculation, like we saw with phones and BlackBerry, like we saw, with any iteration of technology ever. Some of the early first movers ended up, not performing versus the titans of the industry that came in, like Apple and Microsoft. Things condense around 2 to 3 not chains, but in this example, chains, but competitors, two to three, market participants usually dominate, and we see that condensing happen. I think we're in a point where it's still relatively unclear what those chains are going to be. My bets are on like Bitcoin and XRP at the moment, maybe Solana. But Solana's got to find. I think it's whatever chain and ecosystem finds product market fit for real world assets. I think this like meme coins and NFTs have been totally speculative up until this point, and it's a race for real world assets now that the rest of the world and banks and institutions and governments are on board with blockchain. So big inflection point. Ethereum's looking rough.
I agree. I'm not ready to punt on it yet. Not yet. Just yet. Speaking of punting, there was punting of human beings going on. This is in Argentina, okay? These are Argentinian politicians that are fighting over impeachment proceedings of Javier Milei because of the whole Libra token. You told me to buy the Libra coin. I hate you. I'm down $3 million. So interesting there. Can a meme coin take down a president? That would be crazy, right? And then a funny meme I saw, this couple went to the gym together for 6 months. Pretty cool, right? Well, and the guy replied, did he wait outside? Did the guy... I thought that was funnier than maybe it was. And then yesterday, we had the largest ever drone show that had Bitcoin. Look at this. This was in Austin, Texas. And this actually won a Guinness World Record. Gemini was I believe, a sponsor of that. And so they won a Guinness Book of World Records. So shout out to Gemini and whoever the hell it was that put all those drones together. That's pretty cool.
What are you gonna do here in Vegas?
With that being said, Robin, don't just go over the markets. Skip over Ethereum, please, for the love of God.
All right, so just to take a look at the biggest gainers today. We have Bitcoin 84.5. Nice big rally today. So on the 24-hour chart here from CoinMarketCap, you can see that we were at 80,000. And so just in 24 hours, up from 80,000 to almost 85,000, which we did briefly go over. And so I do feel pretty confident on the direction of Bitcoin. I don't think it is a short-term rally. Going down the list on the biggest gainers for today, Trump is up 15% on the 24 hours. Could this be an indication that memes might have a little bit of a rally?
No.
Is Trump the first to pop? I don't know. Not quite too sure. I'm not sold on a meme coin bounce just yet. I think they've got a little bit more capitulation. But you do have Hyperliquid, Injective, and Chainlink over here. I saw some nice movement on Caspa. We are a big Caspa channel here. We were talking about the value of Caspa earlier this week when it was at 5 cents. If you had bought at 5 cents, well, you'd be up about 50%, right? We did call out a few projects that were greatly undervalued earlier this week when Bitcoin really bottomed out when it was under $80,000. We highlighted a couple projects that we thought were at a great buy zone. We mentioned Caspa. We also mentioned Cardano, but I will say that Caspa, just in hindsight, was really a good play. Can't nail them all, but I still think this is a great time to enter in on Cardano. And then take a look at what's down the most today. It's not much on the 24 hours. Very, very green across the board. We only have three top 100 projects under today on the 24 hour, and that's Pi, Mantra, and Tron. But even then, they're really not down much. Now, that's all I got. I did want to give a little love to the chat, though. If you are new here, say hello. We'd love to give you a little recognition. Just type anything or something into the chat. I'll give you a shout out. We do got Dave Roy, also new type, Red Elephant, Chandra, Max, Joy Bean, Mr. K, Put on Mascara, Stephanie Mallet, Trade Intuition, Jake Howell, Blocky Crypto, USMC. Also, we did have 2 super chats. The Nerd Den gave a $2 super chat, said BTC is glorified meme coin. Maybe. And then also you have Poman, $20 super chat, said, don't forget to like and subscribe and give some love to Blocky Crypto. And
I was
to all of you, hola, welcome.
We're always looking at our analytics, our numbers. I realized over the last 90 days, 70% of our views came from people who are not subscribed.
Shame on you.
700,000 views from people that are not subscribed. Guys, subscribe to the channel, please. For the love of God. All right. With that being said, I want to move on. I'll talk about that later. Let's move on to this. We talk about signals, indicators, the top end, is the market over, yada, yada, yada. Well, one thing we always talk about the Fed, liquidity, printing, how that's kind of the lifeblood of the markets. Well, what's the lifeblood of the crypto markets, right, guys? It's stable coins. It is our money printer. So thank you, Tether. Thank you, Circle. Rising stablecoin supply signals crypto's bull run isn't over yet. Say post on cryptobriefing.com. According to the crypto analytics firm Into the Block, historical data shows stablecoin supply typically peaks during market cycle highs, with a previous peak of around $187 billion recorded in April of 2022, just before the market started reclining. Since stablecoin supply is now higher than ever and increasing, this suggests the market has not yet peaked and is still in a growth phase. And Solana looks like they are leading that charge as their stablecoin supply jumps 130% year to date. So from January 1st until now, up 130%. One thing I've highlighted here, so the supply of stablecoins on Solana increased by 130% in 2025, going from 5 billion to 11.8, mainly due to the issuance of USDC. Forrest, do you agree with this headline here, right? Stablecoin rising means the market's not over. How much weight do you put on this? And what are your general thoughts? And maybe speak on Solana with the stablecoin as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the, if one of the signs that it's over is like, if you have a lot of people just getting their money off chain and off of exchanges and taking it out of stable coins and redeeming it for dollars, right? So like if I didn't believe that the market was going to continue to go up, what would I logically do? I would take my stable coins, move them to Coinbase, swap them for dollars, put them in the bank account, or a brokerage account, go put it in gold and bonds, whatever, somewhere outside of crypto. So that's usually a really negative sign when the stablecoin supply is shrinking. But if it's continuing to rise, then it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't go lower or that we can't get a deeper correction. But it's absent. We're kind of absent that sign of like shrinking stablecoin supply, which you really don't want to see. You don't want to see contraction because that means liquidity is moving out of the crypto ecosystem. I actually think we're going to see stablecoin supply absolutely skyrocket over the next couple of years. So I think that's one bullish indicator.
I agree. And, I've shared a few plays in the stablecoin kind of vertical. Any thoughts here?
Stablecoins is the future. And I don't really have much to expand upon the articles you pulled up, but the priority for the government, priority for the executive branch, priority for all of the divisions that are discussing or branches of government that are discussing crypto regulation, seems like the first thing out of their mouth is always stablecoins. I think that it's an obvious grab to revenue. I think that the fact that all of these stablecoin issuers are locking up their backstop, or they're backing their stablecoins with dollars, but the dollars are tied up in usually T-bills in the form of 90-day T-bills. So it's an investment in the U.S. government, and so you don't need to look any further than the top 10 on the market cap list. And you have Tether and USDC. The two combined are $200 billion. I mean, you look at Tether here at $145 billion. And then you look at USDC at basically $60 billion for a net total of $200 billion. So $1/5 of $1 trillion is basically represented in dollars. And if this here is tied up in treasury bills, that's all investment in the U.S. government. And then you don't need to go too much further down the list to see more and more stable coins as you go down. And so this ecosystem is going to continue to grow. I would not be surprised to see new players enter in the space. And honestly, I think that there is a strong likelihood that we see Tether flip Ethereum. I think that that's something we don't discuss quite enough. I think that Tether getting to Ethereum's market cap or replacing it in number 2, and then seeing USDC climb into the top 5, I think is an inevitability in my opinion. And so pretty bullish on stable coins. Pay attention. Anything that involves stable coins as far as crypto projects, like you mentioned Solana and other players that will represent the stablecoin space. I think those are something you should keep an eye on for an investment or as a maybe a trade entry position, right?
I mentioned in the beginning of the show, there's one narrative that has kind of been brought to the spotlight, and not a lot of people are talking about. So I'm curious to get everyone's thoughts here. So, Story Protocol CEO says intellectual property is crypto's $70 trillion opportunity. This is a pretty interesting article here. So, Story Protocol is on a mission to bring intellectual property to the blockchain, a market that the founder, Zhao, says is riddled with inefficiencies. This is what he said. Intellectual property is a $70 trillion asset class, but also one that's extremely inefficient. I want to create a lunchbox, and this is an example he gives. I want to create a lunchbox of Darth Vader. How would I do that? I'm going to hire a legal team to represent me. I have to go find the right lawyers at Disney's licensing division to go and take a meeting with. Then I need to go through a very complex legal negotiation. And if I'm successful, then I can get a deal, and I have to audit that deal over and over. Their solution that they're pitching here as Story Protocol is programmable IP, a blockchain-powered system where creators can license their content instantly and be automatically paid when someone uses it. He goes on to say, the creator might say, here's my character that I created. You need to pay me $1,000 up front to get a license for it. And this license is a commercial license, so if you generate revenue, you need to share 50%. Now, any of the users on connected apps can actually know exactly what they need to do in order to use it. We're the first blockchain company that A16Z Crypto has led 3 rounds in a row since Coinbase, referring to Andreessen Horowitz's $3.4 billion crypto fund. Beyond investors, Story Protocol is already onboarding huge IPs, including BTS and Justin Bieber, as well as David Goyer, the screenwriter behind the Dark Knight trilogy, who is using the platform to launch a new sci-fi franchise. Story Protocol, when they had their TGE, that thing was consistently in the top on 24% gainers. Maybe not specifically Story Protocol, but Forrest, feel free to chime in on that. But what are your thoughts on this narrative of intellectual property, the inefficiencies that Jason laid out? And do you think there's a real opportunity here? Is this something that people should maybe put on their radar?
Yeah, definitely worth going on the watch list and the radar. Something like this, I think, is difficult to value without doing a deep dive to really understand, like, how does value accrue to this token over time? What are the tokenomics? What are they? What is, okay, it's a $70 trillion opportunity. What's the potential for market penetration and actually getting some of that value into this ecosystem? We've seen these big Justin Bieber, Bored Ape Yacht Club. We've seen the Coca-Cola Polygon. We've seen Starbucks. We've seen some of these big name partnerships come in and not necessarily equate to token price just perpetually going up. So I think this is very interesting, and I think it's something worth paying a lot of attention to. But I do think that as far as valuing the token and the opportunity here, it's something that is going to require a much deeper dive than versus just throwing money at it at whatever price it currently is. So I can't speak to token valuation at the moment because I just haven't been able to do the research on this in particular. But very, very interesting concept and opportunity.
It makes too much sense, but I just fear that the implementation is going to be a long process, right? I just look at it when in a ticket, NFT tickets. I look at it the same way as supply chain NFTs as tracking or authentication. It makes so much sense, right? When you talk about it, like, hey man, why don't you put your supply chain on blockchain and then we can validate it and authenticate it? And the thing is companies have their own procedures. They already have the infrastructure set out, and they've been set in their ways. They've grown their companies from startups into these multi-billion-dollar companies that have global reach. And then, you're just sitting here on the outside looking in, but like you would save so much money, just put it in the blockchain and make it, but they just never do. And so at face value on paper, yes, it makes sense. Why not? Intellectual property, you know what? Let's streamline monetizing your work, right? That's essentially what companies are doing. And Disney is the king of it, right? You see all these different Disney products out there, Disney sets for Legos and things of that nature. And so for me, it makes a lot of sense, but I just think it would probably fall in the same category as tokenizing tickets for sporting events, right? It makes sense, but nobody's doing it. Tokenizing the blockchain or tokenizing your supply chain and using it for authentication and tracking makes so much sense, but realistically, nobody's doing it. And so is this kind of the same narrative where it makes so much sense to have intellectual property on blockchain and just have it in a decentralized manner? It makes sense, but I'm just afraid nobody's going to do it.
You just need one company to make the jump. And when I think about projects that have ends with companies, there's really one that comes to my mind, and it's Hedera. You talk about Hedera's governing council, the people that are actually actively in their ecosystem, that get grants, that put up money. And so to your point, if that is going to be the case, you just need one company to make the jump. BlackRock makes the jump into ETFs. Everyone starts getting into ETFs, right? As far as TradFi, right? Crypto companies excluded. And so when you think about that, it's just going to take one. Just going to take the U.S. to create a strategic reserve, and every other country is going to do it. It's just going to take BlackRock to tokenize something on the blockchain, then everyone's going to do it. It's going to take Nike to put the supply chain, or to put their supply chain on blockchain, and then everyone's going to do it. So we just need one. And so I think when you look at projects that will have an in there, if that's your thesis, I don't think.
But I don't know if one will do it. I mean, you look at California, they put car titles on the blockchain. That was years ago, and nobody else has done it. 50 other states. Is only 1 out of 50 has done it. And so I don't know,
Years
man.
ago?
Yeah, it was probably 2 years ago that Avalanche tokenized car titles for California. Haven't seen anybody else do it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that like I doubt. I just have doubt in this area, and I just think it's because it doesn't have a lot of retail appeal. It's not sexy to the investor that's going to YOLO $1,000 into a coin because his friend told him about it. That's hard to explain. It's hard to rationalize. It's hard to sit around at the water cooler at work and convince somebody that intellectual property rights is something that's going to be traded on blockchain. It just sounds really complex, even saying it here on camera. And so I just find it really difficult to think this thing is going to take off in the short term.
If you clear some space in your head of that Ethereum hate, you'll have more space to digest this information. That'll do it for the show today. Thank you all so much. Big shout out to our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by CAM's Blue Wire Technology. If you want to learn how CAMS can help your business scale and grow, maximize your networking, IT, and cybersecurity, visit bluewiretech.com. Also, our friend Forrest, go follow him on X at Sistine Research. He also has a research hub where you can join a Discord to get a lot of great info in there. He does a town hall, I believe, every single week. A lot of great info. That link is in the description of this video. If you want to support Forrest, he's been joining us since we had sub 1,000 subscribers. So always a pleasure to have you on, Forrest. Thank you so much. We hope you all have a great weekend. And with that being said, Rocco. I got nothing else to say. My outro's done. Come and join me. Yeah, we know what Rocco's going to say. Come and join me at 4:45 p.m.
There's a lot of XRP hype coming from the producer today. Rocco, you were hyped up today, man.
Was trying.
Yeah.
Love the XRP.
You can only see what was happening behind closed doors. We love you guys. Have a great weekend. Peace.
No capping with Bitcoin. If you're in, then you win. We divide the pie with no fraction. It's Big Rob, David. I spit the game, but they gave it. Name the coin, it's your favorite. I got dry powder, why save it? To the OGs, new beginners. Special shout out to the well members. Buy a dip, sell winners. Ain't really nothing you can tell sinners. Tune in for the latest new flavors. They gonna teach us mean coins. They polarizing like barbecue chicken pizza.